We're going to be talking about an update to our $10 million challenge. And the burning question is, are we going to make it? Hey, welcome back to the Amazing Freedom Podcast. I'm joined by Andy Slamans and back by popular demand, Absalom, our Chief Marketing Officer. And we're going to be talking about an update to our $10 million challenge. And the burning question is, are we going to make it? We just had an episode last week where we talked about some of the maybe scariness that is in the environment right now, hearing about the inflationary pressure and Amazon, people going back to retail instead of buying online. And so internally, we're asking ourselves, was this $10 million challenge a good idea? Putting ourselves out there. I mean, Andy, is this something at this point that you're asking yourselves, what did you get yourself into, kind of committing to a $10 million challenge? So let's go through that. What's your initial thoughts when it comes to looking at where we're at as a brand, navigating these choppy waters?
Yeah, right. So you always have to kind of expect the unexpected. Although for the last 10 years, really, we've been in a bull run, economy wise, worldwide. We launched this very aggressive initiative to do $10 million right at the beginning of the year. And the markets were still good then, at the end of 2021. And we're excited, and then boom, everything goes down. Even Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, you're supposed to stay up high, but now it's going down, and we're kind of clinging and really just calling on to this goal. We want to do 10 million, despite right all the fear mongering that's happening right now in the media and everything. It's like a big circle. So that's the question of this podcast, right? Are we going to hit that 10 million, Nate and Abs?
Yeah, well, we really don't know still yet. And I guess we'll see. We committed to it, so we'll keep updating on a monthly basis. We have put out faithfully every single month, January through May so far, our actual revenue numbers, our actual profit numbers, even too, our PBC. And so I think there's some really good tips in there. If you go to Amazing Freedom and you sign up to be an insider, you'll get that delivered to you each month, or get a notification that we have a blog release, as well as our monthly magazine and our weekly newsletter. And we talked a lot about the $10 million challenge, I think, earlier in the year. In the last couple of months, we haven't talked about it a lot week to week. So I want to update on some of our biggest challenges year to date, some of our biggest wins, some things that surprised us the most, or maybe you the most, Andy, along the way, and what we think the rest of the year holds for us, despite all those things you just said, that we're in a choppy environment. So let's start with, do you want to start with the challenges or the wins? What's better? It's almost like the bad news or the good news.
Let's do the challenges.
All right, we'll start with the challenges. So maybe Abs, Andy, let's each think of maybe like a major challenge. And, it doesn't have to be by our core focus, I guess. Abs is typically working with more of our marketing end. It could be anything, since through this year, I think we've all done it. But here, I'll start off and I'll say, I think one of the biggest challenges is that we started the year off trying to do too much, actually. So, you start the year sometimes really ambitious with a lot of annual goals. We have a couple different companies and brands that we own and run. And so sometimes you want to be ambitious on everything that you're doing and set these lofty goals. And I don't think anything we did was completely unrealistic, but it always comes down to this question of focus. And so I think we started off, I think focus in Q1 was a problem for us. And maybe I'm getting into wins, but I think that we've kind of corrected that and we're more on course again. In Q2, we really were able to get back to focus. But I would say a big challenge for us so far is focus. And so just trying to do too much too early, trying to cross some of our companies a little bit, trying to get some team members working on too many projects instead of getting a team member who's really, really good at media, let's say, just focused on media, trying to get them to do too many different things. I'm kind of that sometimes, where I will try to do too many things and I'll lose focus, but sometimes I can handle it. I probably don't do it as good as I could. But when you start trying to do it to too many other people on your team, you really start to see where that person's so good at that one area. Let's let them focus. So that's mine. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, so this is going to lead into, I think, a really good question for Abs, and Abs can kind of share his experience. One of the biggest struggles that we've had over the past probably 18 months is just the amount of time that operations takes for our business, doing 12 plus million a year over the last 2 years, previous 2 years. There are an extreme amount of operational challenges that really you and I, Nate, have been handling, as well as Abs, who is our chief marketing officer, and that's what he's really good at. But we had to pull Abs into operation. And so for the last year, Abs has been having to sit in these operational meetings, which doesn't necessarily give him the energy, and the vision. But he's so amazing, really, at everything he does, that he willingly, sat in on these operation meetings. But during these meetings, that I could look at Abs and I could just see him like dying a slow death, right? Because he gets excited about marketing and getting, our name out there. And again, that's what he's really good at. But he amazingly sat in, helped us kind of work through that until we were able to, eventually hire what we think is a great operations manager. But Abs, just share a little bit about that experience and how, again, you did an amazing job, right, of working with those teams. But what was that like, drawing from, you're our CMO, but then you had to like fill some shoes there operationally. Share that experience.
Well, for sure, I didn't do a good job, just because I think we're all trying to learn and fix things together. But I think the greatest experience I had from doing everything we did was it really felt like a startup, right? Like nobody was in a particular seat. We're all trying to make stuff happen. I remember earlier this year, we had issues with inventory, and sometimes we have issues with listing, and we have to create new calls and jump into some operation stuff. So it really felt like a startup environment, which we still are, and that's the big takeaway. We have to get into the trenches when we have to make things work. I did enjoy some of those calls, but it feels better to be focused on just marketing at this point. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Can I say this? A lot of people ask me, how do you know when you find a good manager, or someone who has management potential? I think it goes back to that old adage of when you have the manager, the leader who's willing to pick up the broom and sweep the corner because they see a mess, right? And Abs is that guy who even though operations is not his thing, he's always willing to pick up the broom and sweep the mess, even if that's another person's job. I've never heard him say like, that's not my job, so I'm not going to sit in on that meeting. So hopefully that helps someone who's listening to this. If they're looking for who's got that potential to be a great leader eventually, I think that's an understated quality, that person who's willing to do whatever it takes in a startup environment, especially if you have less than 10 employees. Like, yeah, at times you do have to do anything, right? You have to be at least willing to do anything. And that's some of our team members where they're not willing to do it, where they're like, hey, that's supposed to be someone else. I'm not going to do that because that's almost like beneath me, or that type of mentality. I think you can struggle in a startup environment with that person.
Let me just share this story real quick. So my son is working at our warehouse this summer, and before he started working, this is the first time where he's working every single day, and I'm not there. And I said to him, AJ, just know, whoever is above you, right? They're going to assign you tasks. And when you're done with those tasks, every time you're going to go to him and you're going to say, hey, what else do you want me to do? Or what's next? I finished this task. And if that person is busy and you can't reach them, what I want you to do then is I want you to go into the bathroom. I want you to empty the trash can. I want you to clean the bathroom. I want you to sweep the floor. You never are inactive. And so if you can't find the next task, you figure out what you can do as a good team member in that warehouse and choose the thing that the guys who have been there for 2 or 3 years like doing the least. And you do that, because then you're going to give value to those guys, right?
So you can see that in the warehouse, right? So someone who's there, they'll recognize that, but online it's hard. So I'll actually go back to you, Abs, on this. Is like, I mean, when you have 30 people that in the past year you've been helping to manage, I mean, how do you see that person who's emptying the trash when it's virtual? What does that look like in your mind, emptying the trash for team members? Again, just trying to get the perspective of someone listening who's trying to, again, build a team up maybe, or look for someone who's going to be a good value add to their company.
Man, it's difficult online, like you said. But sometimes you pick on team members asking the right questions. I think it usually starts with the right questions. how do we do X to improve Y, or who is doing this and who is doing that. And so when people begin to ask a lot of those questions, you see them showing initiatives on sort of how to improve. For example, you have a new SEO person come in and they're supposed to focus on just SEO, and they start asking you, hey, who is doing social media? How are they using hashtags on social media? How are they using the keywords on social media? And that's somebody seeing areas of improvement that would help what they are doing. And that's just a simple example, but periodically, team members come through that show a lot of interest, ask a lot of questions, and that's almost like taking out the trash if you were in a physical environment, I guess.
All right, going back to our challenges, I'll list one that's very painful. So, in the life cycle of a business, you're always trying to identify basically of a physical product business, identify your winners and your losers, right? And what can be painful is when a winner turns into a loser because anybody who's been selling for years, whether it's arbitrage or wholesale or private label, I think you go through this at some point where you have this, or it might be a store, right? You have like this, Andy, I think you would always call it a honey hole store. You would have these in arbitrage, and it was like you knew every time you went there you would make money. But what happens over time? It dies this slow death, and it stops making that money. But you have to make this decision eventually: is it worth your time? Well, we had to kind of go through that with a product earlier this year, a product that was at one point a top 5, maybe even a top 3 product for us. And for a variety of reasons, basically we had to make this decision to pull the plug on it basically this year because it just wasn't another Andy saying was the juice, the squeeze wasn't worth the juice, or the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I get that wrong, right? But it basically came to that where it's like, hey, this just isn't worth it anymore. And we had to make that decision. But this was a big revenue generator for us up until last year. And so that was painful. I would say I'll ask you this, Andy, if it was back on January 1st or December 31st, and I told you we're going to do a $10 million challenge, but we can't have this product, what would your confidence level be? I guess asking you if we would hit it.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be very, very low, right? And I imagine, any veteran sellers that are listening to this, they would probably answer the same way. But I always go back to kind of what Dan Wentworth shares, and I really hold that close to my chest, is he's been selling online now for 20 plus years full time. And every year he discovers a new product that really becomes a heavy generator for his business. So, for me, like that was a hard hit, but you just got to cling to, like, there are literally thousands and hundreds of thousands of products out there. We just haven't discovered them yet. And so it really comes back to, just having a positive mindset that there's products out there. We just have to do the work to discover them.
Agree, but it is painful along the way sometimes. So I'll wrap up with the challenges on mine, at least. If you guys have any more, throw them out there. But I'll just say, like, we started the year slow. So if you go back and you look at our $10 million challenge, January and February and even March was rough. Like, we set these goals and it was it's a little, I don't know, embarrassing isn't the right word. I wasn't embarrassed, but like, we set this goal, and on our blog post, you can go back and look, like we did not hit it for those first couple months. So that is a challenge when we thought we were going to do X and we were under by like $100,000-$200,000. I mean, a significant amount. And so we started the year slow. So that was, for me, kind of wrapped up the challenges year to date so far with the brand in this $10 million challenge. So do you guys have anything else on that, or can we move to wins?
I do have one challenge I could hit on. Two, but I'll make it quick. The first is letting the fire out. So as part of our $10 million challenge, we said we're going to launch a $1 million product line. And we did launch the product line. It started slow, but it began to pick up really well because we did some of the things we said we're going to do. And at some point, we stopped doing the things we said we're going to do that we're doing that was making it work. And I think that has been a challenge and slightly a loss on our part because we still have so much opportunity there. So I'd say that's been a challenge for sure, because we think that product line could do more and we just haven't put the same energy we put into it from the start. And the second is getting the right people in the right seat. I think going back to your first point, Nate, we had a lot of responsibilities placed on too many team members, but also we had a lot of the wrong team members in sort of the right seat or the wrong seat with the right person, and then not having experts doing expert tasks. For example, we have a team member who's handling one of our ad platforms, and this team member is actually sort of a freelance, but he has been able to use his time so well to execute on his tasks so well. while we had somebody else before doing it for like 40, 60 plus hours, doing less than this person. So I think that's been a challenge and a win there, where we now know that it doesn't matter the hours, it's about having the right person with the right skills, with the right experience doing the job. And that gets us to the goal. So that's, I think, challenge and a bit of a win there for the year so far.
Yeah, I think you covered both well, and I think it does go back to that first focus point. That's been the struggle, is the focus point, and now that some of these issues are from a lack of focus in some ways.
Well, and let's just talk about this, Nate, because I think it's so important. What he said there was we had the right people, but they were possibly in the wrong seat, right? How often do you think that possibly happens? Because explain kind of what could potentially happen if you got the right person, but they're in the wrong seat.
Well, I think that's what we saw when going back to your point earlier with Absalom. He's the right person, but him sitting in the operations seat that we had him on this year was just a struggle. Not even that the operations didn't happen, but for him personally, he just wasn't, thriving maybe the way that we could see him in a different role. So I think that's happened there a lot. Is you get someone that you just know is a good worker, fits in with your team. And so you just got to really figure out what can you take. Here's my test that I go through actually with evaluations with people is what gives you energy. And they usually will answer, hey, I really like, working with data or something. And then you're like, what takes away your energy? And they might say, man, I really just despise when I have to do a customer service phone call or whatever, right? And you're like, okay, you're the right person, but maybe you shouldn't be our customer service rep answering phone calls or something if this is gonna drain you every day. So that's happened a lot. And then the flip of what he said you identify the area, which in and of itself can be challenging, but you just have the wrong person. That's also here happening where they're doing good work. They might even have the skills, but they're just not the right fit, culturally. That's we've seen both this year a lot through 30 plus team members.
That's good. I just think it's so important that people understand that as you're building the team, that you could have the right person, but it's kind of on the leader to really filter through. Look, this is the right person, but maybe we just need to get them in a different seat, right? What were you going to say, Abs?
Right. I wanted to give a practical example. We have one of our team members who creates content on our social, and I think earlier this year we had him do so many other stuff. Right. So he was on the phone with customers. He was reaching out to customers, and all of those things were taken away from the thing he was really good at, which was being the face on our social and creating content. And we made the decision to say, hey, let's let go of all this other stuff. Just focus on this one thing that gives you so much energy. And I think we saw our social and our community really pick up when we made that decision. So that was like a really practical example there.
Yeah, that was probably the best example this year. And the cool thing about this person in particular is out of our 30 plus team members, he's the only one that can really do this, right? And so that's where I think this becomes more heightened or exponential, is when you have someone that is literally the only person on your team that can do this. You have to double down on that skill that they are extraordinary on. And you hear this a lot about in management, is that you have some generalists and then some specialists, right? And you have to really help those specialists to excel at what they are really, really good at. So yeah, I like it. So that was kind of the bad news, the challenges on our $10 million challenge. Let's hit some of the wins, because there has been plenty of wins along the way as well. So I'll just throw one out there, is to go along with our theme earlier, is although we were scattered in Q1, in Q2, I think we got way more focused. We introduced some kind of like operating systems into our business. We did get some new right people into the right seats. And we talked about this just on the last episode or maybe two ago, that we hired a VP of operations that has really come in and helped manage a lot of the operational stuff that Absalom was doing before I was doing. We were kind of sharing around. And so that was been, I would say, a huge win that is, I think, going to pay off through the rest of the year. Andy, what's a major win for you this year?
Yeah, for sure. That I think we were fortunate to have a good amount of inventory early on. Last 2021 and 2020, so many companies struggled with supply chain and inventory issues, and a lot of them actually over ordered. And so if you've read anything in the news at all, like about Target or Walmart, they actually have too much inventory now because they overestimated the demand. And so now they're slashing prices. Thankfully, we had inventory at the right time, kind of coming into our strong selling season. So we didn't go out of stock, and we had a decent amount to be able to carry us through. So that was definitely a win that I think that we were concerned about, but we ended up doing a good job of.
Without having too, so you talked about having too much. We had a pretty good balance where we thought we had too much actually in Q4 of last year, and then realized in Q2 of this year that we for some stuff didn't have enough, that we thought there's no way we could sell it all. So that was definitely a win, that we sold through some of the stuff that we were worried about having too much on. Yeah, for sure. Abs, you have one?
Yeah, sure. One, I would say product launches. We obviously, as an Amazon business, a lot has changed from last year to this year, and how you could launch product. A lot of things that you could do before, you no longer could do them. But we have been able to successfully launch a couple of products this year, and launch it with profitability. So we started from the very first week or so, and we're profitable without going crazy on PPC, which is like the doctrine right now. You have to go crazy on PPC and lose some money. But we've had some really good launches this year, and we're still launching more products. So I think that has been a big win, and we're learning how to launch even better, which is the big takeaway from the launches we've had so far. So that has been a big win.
I'll say a last one for me here, that we talked about losing a top 5 SKU of ours. Well, last year in Q2, so almost a whole year, over a year ago, we spent a considerable amount of time and resources to launch a entire new category of product line that ended up being about 12 to 15 unique products within this category. And at the time, it was kind of a risk. It was a big investment, a big time thing. And we were just hoping that it would pay off in the future. And I'm happy to say that this year it really did pay off. And I think the only reason that we are now we'll kind of we started the pod asking, are we going to get to our goal? We'll kind of get into where we're at right now. I think the only reason that we're selling good the last couple of months is because we have never stopped trying to bring new products in, as you were talking about, Andy. So, I know before we always said, always be sourcing if we're doing arbitrage, right? Always looking for that next arbitrage product. But even in building a brand, I think we're always looking for a product line to bring in, new products to keep adding, because inevitably some of your existing products are going to fall away. Or if you're just looking to grow, you need to spark it beyond just the organic growth that you're doing with your current product. So having that product line, I think added about $200,000 a month plus the last couple months to our total sales. And now the last couple months, we've been hitting about the last 2 months in a row, we're going to hit 1.3 million. So we started off by saying, are we going to hit, the goal? I still don't know. We're only halfway through the year, so definitely can't say, but I think we're on a pretty good track. So through the end of May, we were at about 44% of our total $10 million Amazon goal. And this is just Amazon. So I know we keep throwing out different numbers of what we've done. The $10 million challenge is specifically for Amazon sales. So we've never been able to do that specifically just on Amazon. And that's what we're trying to achieve this year. So we're 44% of the way through on Amazon. And that's a pretty good place. Now, will all that bad stuff that Andy talked about in the beginning happen to us? It could still. So we'll keep updating through the year and see how that goes. But I do want to end on this. Maybe one thing that surprised you the most, or just a prediction through the rest of the year. What is it going to be like? Are we going to hit our goal? Supply chain choppiness, is sales going to slow down? We have Prime Day coming up. I don't know what that's going to be like, or Q4 this year. So any predictions you guys want to throw out there, or stuff that surprised you so far this year? Andy, you want to start?
Yeah, I think online sales is going to continue to grow. So, again, in a lot of the news and in a lot of the media, you'll hear like, oh, retail stores, are back. People enjoy shopping now, as the pandemic begins to wind down. And, just in our experience with our small little brand, what I say is people are still ordering as much online as ever if you have the right product mix. So, as a seller on Amazon, or if you're looking to sell on Amazon, you have to sell what sells. So you can't buy inventory that is going to be dead. You got to be able to find the right product mix that sells. And I think that online sales are going to continue to grow as we, as humans, continue to stare at our screens, live on our phones. Like, I don't see that becoming less. I see that as becoming more and more. And I often say this, up to 2 years ago, my wife always grocery shopped in a grocery store. Now we never set foot in a grocery store. We order all of our groceries online because we've become comfortable with getting purchases online, and it is a time saver. At the end of the day, what I think online shopping, it's such a win versus retail, it saves you time. And that's something that we can never get back. Time is one of the greatest assets that we have. And I think that continues to get pushed. So that's my prediction for the next 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years.
Okay, so that's a long-term prediction. Let me ask you a hard one, not to put you on the spot. Do you think Prime Day 2022 will do more or less sales than Prime Day 2021 on Amazon total?
So that's a really tough question because we all know in 2020 and 2021, there was massive volume because everyone was stuck at their home, right? On their phones, not at work. And so, although we often joke about Mondays are usually our busiest days. And so we say a lot of times people are at work, they're not working, they're shopping, right? On Amazon, because generally Mondays are our busiest day. So with that being said, I say that it will match last year's sales or it will exceed them.
That was a good politician answer to start there, I think. But you did come around at the end and you said matrix exceed. So you did give it was a true answer. Okay, I like it. Abs, any surprise or predictions for the rest of this year?
I don't know if I call this a surprise or prediction, but the change in the advertising landscape, I would say, oh yeah, was a bit of a surprise. I think the first episode we did together, the second one we talked about how building a brand is super important, and more than ever, I think we've noticed a really sharp decline in ad spend across different ad platforms, especially off Amazon. So Amazon, people brands are spending a lot more on PPC, but off Amazon, like Google and Facebook, we're seeing ad spend drop a lot, and it's not because the money's not there to spend. It's just brands are not sure of, how to really allocate that budget, and more than ever, branding and a brand name is proving to be the biggest contributor to sales and people deciding what to buy. So I predict and I think going into Prime Day and the rest of the year, brands that have built a successful brand name recognition, a successful following, would have a blast from Prime Day to Black Friday. But the brands that were super heavy on ads and have terrible customer experience would suffer and would spend more than they did last year on cost per acquisition, on their ROAS would be worse than last year. That's sort of my prediction and surprise at the same time.
Yeah, ads off Amazon have been rough, and on Amazon, right? Our Amazon tacos PPC has gone up like everybody else's in the past year, but we understand Amazon ads more, I guess I would say, compared to Facebook and Google platforms. Just really aren't our forte, but I think everybody's experiencing just. I mean, the numbers don't lie that there was like a 300% increase on costs for a lot of those platforms, right? So that was a challenge. So one prediction I have, I think, is a lot of those VC backed brands are going to kind of fall away because you're just seeing money dry up in these places. So they're gonna these brands that kind of started with $30-50 million capital, but never were really going to be profitable for years, they're going to start to fall away. So I think you'll see the pendulum swing back a little bit where Amazon PPC might, I don't think it's going to go down, but I think it's going to slow down how much it was going up because again, you had people launching brands kind of haphazardly products. So I think that will not, increase costs as dramatically. And I think off Amazon, that'll be even more apparent on Google and Facebook. So you might see Google and Facebook ads 2023 looking like, the hot thing again, potentially. Or maybe it's TikTok. I don't know, right? One of these social platforms. So, and then I'll make a specific to our brand prediction. We will launch by the end of the year a product that will become a top 10 seller for us in in a month that we aren't selling right now. Right. So this is like a total, I don't know if it's true and it's very specific to our brand, but I'm saying that we have some products in the pipeline. So one of our products we're going to be launching soon will become a top 10 seller by the end of the year. So that's my specific brand take. So, all right, guys, that's a look at our $10 million challenge through this year. We are 44% of the way through the goal through the end of May. We did 1.3 million in May, and I think we're trending towards 1.3 million in June as well. So going pretty well despite a lot of the challenges. But It's yet to be seen what Q3 and Q4 are going to hold for us. We're getting ready to launch a Q3 theme for our brand, and I encourage you to do something like that. If you don't do that, set a theme, set some goals around what you're trying to accomplish for the quarter. And don't forget, if you haven't yet, go to amazingfreedom.com, sign up to be an insider. You'll get our weekly newsletter, our monthly magazine, our blog updates on our $10 million challenge, and occasionally a good picture of Andy without a shirt on, lifting up boxes and loading them into a container. If that's your thing, you got to sign up to be an insider. All right, guys, good talk, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Amazing Freedom Podcast. See ya.